Hello there, and welcome to the CMOS, to the Code Maven Open Source podcast and interview series. I'm your host, Gabor Sabo, and with me is Lynn, Cyrin, Conway. Hello, Lynn. How are you? How are you?
Good, good.
Good. Um, Before we get on to, I saw. Let's start with your name. I saw you call yourself Lynn Cyrin Conway on one hand, but in other places just Lynn Cyrin.
Yeah,
Uh, can you tell me a little bit about this background?
I would call myself Lynn Cyrin Conway everywhere, but websites like to not have the a proper name field to allow that. But yeah, so it started because so I picked Lynn first, just independently of my last name. I only changed my first name. I had to change my name, so I changed my first name to Lynn. It ended up Lynn Conway. Which coincidentally is also the name of another trans lesbian web developer.
Hmm.
So that was nice. I just ran into that, and I was like, "Oh, well, I mean, should I change it now? No, it's kind of cool to have the same name." And then I started trying to like build a web developer profile, and I realized that you can't Google me and find me through Lynn Conway. I mean, maybe like I don't know, 20 years from now, but not like right now. So I picked Lynn Cyrin, and like within like I don't know 2 days of using that, I got all of the whole front page of Google. So now I'm good. I'm like
Okay,
safe. You can find me on the internet.
good. So, do you have contact with her? Have you ever
Yeah,
talked to
I
her?
have. It took I don't know 2 years of having the name, but eventually one of my advisors, something was like, "Oh yeah, do you want to meet other Lynn Conway? Like I know her," and it's like, "Oh, it would be really cool to know other Lynn Conway." Not like I like have any significant relationship, but I just like, "Oh yeah, cool. We share all of these things and have the same name. That's kind of nice." So yeah,
That's interesting. Okay, and does she do anything with computers?
yeah, I'm doing like I don't know something not like Ruby Python, but
Okay.
like I don't know C Perl that type
Oh,
tech
interesting.
stuff.
Interesting. Uh, okay, so tell me a little bit about your how did you get into? I mean, you do a tons of stuff. I saw Ruby and Python and all these other things. But how did you started with programming and open source?
Well, I mean, so the my programming start was I was in college for a bunch of different engineering degrees, and I wasn't too excited about any particular engineering degree. Like I would study like mechanical engineering and then chemical engineering and materials engineering. And eventually I got to astronautical engineering, which is rocket science, and I
Okay.
was like writing code to I was writing the code that helps guide rockets on their way up out of space,
Hmm.
it was just an assignment, right? Because astronautical engineering. And it occurred to me that the writing code part was actually much more interesting than the getting the rockets to outer space part.
Okay.
Um, and that was coincidentally also when I started like getting into like queer and trans stuff. So I learned code right about the same time I started getting into queerness stuff, and I moved to San Francisco because I'm gay, but also San Francisco is where all the tech is. That was
Hmm.
an accident. I
Yeah.
just so happened to find myself in San Francisco because I'm gay, and all of a sudden that's where all of the tech companies are, right? And I just learned Python because there's a lot of Python at NASA. So I went there, and I started doing Python in a lot of these. There's a lot of orgs in San Francisco that are like the intersection of one identity and coding. So I
Hmm.
started going to like these like Python ladies or like like queer people writing whatever, right? And that's how that started. Open source didn't act. Open source is not like it didn't come up as naturally. It's more like I just ran into an open source repository, and I like the idea of open source just appealed to me like innately on such a level that I like since then I've become like this huge open source advocate. Um, all of the conferences I've gone to, all the conferences I've talked at, except ArthurConf, which is a diversity conference, they've all been like Open Source Bridge and other open conferences because I'm like really about just open source. Like I open source all of my stuff,
Hmm.
especially even stuff that people wouldn't ever want to look at. I put it open source anyway because I'm like, oh well, why not? It's not. I don't have the why would I open source this thought. It's more like I need an explicit reason to not open source this because otherwise I will.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how it works.
That's nice. And so at least on GitHub you mention Ruby Together as sort of your employer, but do you also have a do they pay, are they really your employer? Do they pay you, or do you have a job or?
They're my employer in that I'm formally from the government an employer, and they pay me. Everyone at Ruby Together makes 150 an hour. It's really nice that everyone makes all the same wages. Like we'll hire a designer, and they won't suddenly make less than the programmer. So that's nice. Um, but yeah, so Ruby Together pays me to work on Bundler and RubyGems. I also have a bunch of other things that also pay me, but RubyGems is my only formal employer at the moment. Everything else is like crowdfunded or like I own it. So
Okay, but do you usually work at companies as well in the last couple of years, or have you stopped since you left? I don't know.
I
Because
actually
rocket science.
yeah, no, right, I know. But I in my tech career, I've done tiny contracting work here or there where I was like never an employee, and I think I have two interview channels I'm working on right now, and those would be my first like company job, like 40-hour a week things. And it took me 3 years to get to the point where I wanted or could have like a full time job.
Mhm.
So the only other full time job I've had was like I was like a janitor. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't really done the company thing much.
yeah. Well, it's strange. Well, I mean, I'm quite sure that many companies would want your capabilities. I mean, seeing what you do and all this stuff open source. I mean, maybe except the part that they don't want to open source everything you write. Because
Yeah, I say that in interviews. I'm like, can I? How much of my work would be open source? That's always in my interview questions when I talk to a new company. But yeah, like you can see all my code, which is really great. Like I feel like that as an individual, that's the best advantage of working so much in open source is that you can show employers like this is specifically what I've written. This is everything I've written, like in my
yeah,
entire career. You know?
yeah, I know. I mean, I teach various programming languages and stuff. Usually for people working at companies, and they always. I'm trying to tell them, okay, you have to. If you want to show to the next employer some things that you do, then you'll have to open source do something in open source because well you can't really share what you're usually what you do at your company. So
Yeah.
that's nice. So among all the things that you do, we thought that we would talk about Bundler, um, and I really have no idea. So I'm coming from the Perl background and Python and some front end, even though you can't see it on my website. Anyway, but I have really no knowledge about Ruby. Um,
Um, So in the Ruby world, there's Bundler, RubyGems, and RubyGems.org, which are three different organizations with different, or they used to have different ownership. Ruby's going to resolve that, but I'll get to that in a second. And there used to be three different groups of people with all different admins working on three different things that pip all does. So pip's website, the Python packages website, that's RubyGems.org. There's two different the pip doesn't actually really do anything that Bundler does, really. All of that like some of Bundler stuff is what virtualim does, and it does some stuff that pip would like to have, but really pip is just Ruby gems.
okay. So wait,
And
wait,
then
wait a second. Wait a second. So I
yes,
know a command called pip in Python. And
yes.
virtual and in Python. Do you talk about the same, or Ruby has the same names for stuff?
No, I mean so Ruby gems is essentially pip.
Okay,
They have basically the same functionality.
okay, I know.
And then Bundler has some of the functionality of Virtual Env, but
Okay.
they're not equivalent.
Oh, I understand.
That's when the equivalent starts to like get way different. You get Ruby has a bunch of different environment tools
Mhm.
that one would use. Anyway, so what this specifically is that there's RubyGems.org, the website. Um, there's RubyGems, the code base, which that's the thing that downloads an individual gem for you, and then there's Bundler, and that handles like your environment and getting your stuff from your package management file, and then it sends all the commands to RubyGems, which sends commands to RubyGems.org, and then that's how you get the thing. So there's 3 different tools, which finally are being merged a bunch. RubyGems, RubyGems.org, and Bundler all have the same managing organization in Ruby together. This used to not be the case. There used to be kind of a warring factions thing going on between Bundler and RubyGems. It was a mess. Anyway, now one person owns all 3 of them, and they're trying to make all of this more easy to understand. So that's nice.
Okay. So when you're creating a new package in Ruby, do you also use Bundler to bundle together, or there's another thing that you do the packaging? So before I guess you upload it to RubyGems, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure RubyGems handles all of the new package commands. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that particular thing, but I'm pretty sure the new package command is specifically gem new. Gem, it maps to RubyGems. Okay. So yeah, RubyGems is mostly that, because RubyGems also handles the gem hosting part in RubyGems.org, and Bundler doesn't do any hosting whatsoever. So
okay, yeah. I think I get it. So what kind of things do you do there? What kind of things are there to do now these days?
I mean, so the good thing is that for the average user, there is essentially nothing to still do with Bundler or RubyGems. Like it comes installed. Well, Bundler doesn't come installed by default. You have to install Bundler itself. But we're working on that. We're working on making Bundler be a default thing. But RubyGems just comes with the Ruby installation, and you gem install, and it works like you would expect. That's what happens for most people. There's some edge cases, actually it's all edge cases from there. So if you're on Linux and you want to install a simple gem file with no requirements, no optional dependencies, no requirement groups, no optional dependencies, nothing like that, then everything's fine, right? But when you start getting into like you want to have something different on development versus production, then it gets kind of messy, and there's still some features to work out there. If you have optional requirements, there was actually a feature that went out on Bundler about a week ago, where if you had an optional requirement, it would still automatically require them without you having to tell it to do so. And apparently in the past week, invisibly, that broke, where now the optional requirements, you have to explicitly require them. So it's like edge case things. And also, if you're on anything but Linux, things might just break sometimes, especially if you're on Java. JRuby is a really big thing, and things break. Things in JRuby break Bundler all the time. Like every week, there's like a new way that JRuby has broken Bundler. So yeah, for most people it's fine, but the more edge cases you stack on, the more stuff there is to do. That's actually not. I don't actually code. I haven't written a single line of Ruby code for Bundler or RubyGems. I'm the project manager. Mm-hmm. So my main thing is I have a reactive job, in that I watch all of the Slack channels, I see what's happening, I report to other people what's happening, I label things, I organize things, and make sure people know what's up. I write the Ruby Together has monthly updates that I watch all of the Slack channels, all of them, all month. So I have enough information to write the monthly updates so everyone else can know what happens without having to watch every Slack channel. Right. So yeah, usually those sorts of things. I'm basically on GitHub all day without, I'm never on command line, and I'm always on GitHub as my work.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you tell the other people so how do you select what to do or what to work on, or how do people decide what to work on? Are they individually whatever they think about, or how much do you prioritize the jobs, the tasks?
So the majority of the work that this is becoming only mildly less the case over time as RubyGems gets more, as Ruby Together, the organization, gets more money to pay people to work on Bundler and RubyGems. But most of the work on Bundler and RubyGems are just open source contributors who just decide they want to work on it, right? Which makes project management really important, because when you have employees, you make them work because you pay them. But when you have open source contributors, they can just poof, right? So I have the the great job of making sure the open source contributors have a nice time contributing, because if they don't have a nice time, then they can just leave.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how most of the work happens. Like I do my best to make sure that all of the issues are well sorted. I like try to respond to the more irate users or point them where they need to be, and like when I can, when I have time and hours in a day. Those are the things I do. Try to make sure that the non-paid contributors can do their best, and they aren't like having lots of issues, and they get turned off by the source code and those sorts of things. So that's my general job as project manager, and that's how I guide people to the work that they want to do.
And your main communication channels are GitHub, Slack, anything else? Do you use mailing lists?
I spend most of my time switching between GitHub and Slack. Yeah.
So no IRC, for example?
No, there is an IRC channel that nobody uses. I'm not logged into it because not enough happens on it for me to justify adding it to my list of things to watch. Okay. So it's really just Slack at this point. I don't know when it became that it's only Slack, but now it is. So.
Okay, I see. That's great. Okay. I think I ran out of questions about these. Well, actually, not. There is the Ruby Together. So, can you tell a little bit more about the organization, how it works, and how it got together?
That's fine. So Ruby Together is really, really similar to NPM, Node Package Manager. If anyone knows about NPM, Ruby Together is functionally identical. I think the big difference is NPM is like a huge startup. Like, I don't know how much money they make. I don't know how much it's worth, but compared to Ruby Together, NPM is like enormous. Ruby Together is I think this is actually how it's legally set up. Ruby Together is like basically Andre, which he's the director of Ruby Together, and he's a bunch of other things. But so Andre used to be working on Bundler for free, Bundler and RubyGems for free, and he was just working on it, right? Like because it's open source, and he had time, so he was just working on Bundler RubyGems. And this was on the back end of the Warring Factions RubyGems versus Bundler days, where the RubyGems team would push something that broke Bundler's code almost on purpose, and they wouldn't tell him first, and then so suddenly people could use RubyGems, but they couldn't use Bundler, and so Bundler would have to catch up, or like people like the Bundler people would break RubyGems. Like this kept happening back and forth, and then Andre started working on both of them. And something happened where like RubyGems was down for 3 days, and like a lot of big companies lost a lot of money. And Andre was the one who got it back up. About a week after that, people started being like, "Hey, could we pay you money to make sure that you are always around, so when it goes down, it's just down for a few hours, not 3 days. 3 days without being able to install any packages is like huge. Like, what? The package manager is down? That doesn't even make any sense, right? That's something people definitely want to pay for. So it just started almost by accident with people going to my boss to be like, "Hey, we'll give you money for this." So, and he got that enough that he made a nonprofit out of it, and now there's 6 of us. We help out on a few other things like smaller libraries. There's some people working on like VCR and like a bunch of little tools. But mostly it was that people got really tired of RubyGems and Bundler going down, so they started paying money to Andre, and then Andre made a nonprofit, so now this is Ruby Together. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. A lot of things I've learned today. Do you think about anything that we haven't mentioned that you would like to talk about, or would you like to shout out to some people?
I cannot think of anything in particular. I mentioned all of the big stuff. There's like my other work, but like this was just my one of 3 jobs. So I could a half hour about my other jobs, but I'm not going to do that. So yeah, no, this was like this. If within the scope of this work, this was most of the stuff that people will want to know about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you again for coming on the show, and hopefully see you at another episode.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.